So Manny, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join me all the way from Sacramento in California, and Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Thank you very much, and a Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you so very much. And I'm always so happy to do these podcasts, especially when it's someone I don't really know too well. And it's fair to say we've only just recently hooked up on social media, but I've been fascinated by your posts. I've been fascinated by what you've got going on. But more than that, I've been fascinated to learn about your story. Where did it all start for you, Manny?
It all started a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Hey!
I mean, you know, it all started with how, where, and when I was born, I guess. Really, the environment I was born in had a huge, I suppose it continues to have a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
Although maybe not in the way that the people that were there hoped. I was born into a cult and got a lot of counterintuitive and destructive programming.
Right.
It's probably a good way to say it. Made it very difficult for me to go out into the world in any capacity.
Okay.
It made it very difficult for me to create friendships and relationships. You know, and I was always an entrepreneur as young as I can remember. More specifically than that, I have always had a desire to bring people together, give them powerful shared experience, and in so doing, make their lives better. Long before I could articulate it.
Right.
You know, it's interesting to have something burning inside of us that we can't articulate.
For sure.
Right. And
yeah.
And if you have that, and you have, you know, bad scripting, that can lead you in a lot of crazy directions.
Of course.
It can read, because you're sort of, it's like you're driven by an instinct you don't understand.
Right.
So I guess that's where it all started.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining that would have caused you a lot of trouble back then.
Sure. Yeah. I immediately gravitated toward outlaws, drug addicts, you know, the people that lived on the margins of society, right. the fringe dwellers.
Right.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, I started getting in trouble right away, and I didn't really stop getting in serious trouble until I guess I was just about 28 years old. And then it got so bad so fast that
right.
I just vanished from my old life.
Okay.
Rather than continue down the path I was going.
Was there one moment in particular? I mean, you don't have to obviously go into personal details so much, but was there sort of an epiphany you had that kind of helped you see where you were going and lit a path, so to speak?
The epiphany came after the shocking moment.
Right.
And actually, it's interesting way of phrasing that question, because we have a collective mythology, especially as entrepreneurs, around the epiphany.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just come in with a long needle and whoop, just burst that bubble. So what happened first was I got out of jail. I was homeless. I found that all my stuff had been taken while I was in jail.
Right.
I was really at my wit's end.
Okay.
And then I found out the person that took it was, you know, somebody who was, he was the wrong guy to have beef with.
Right.
He really was. And so things escalated very quickly. And I found myself with one friend, frankly, you know, I've told this story so many times now. We were standing there outside of a funky little apartment holding guns and making premeditated plans to kill this guy.
Right.
That's really what it came down to. And that was the moment. That wasn't the epiphany.
Right.
Right. We want to confuse that with the epiphany, don't we?
Yeah, we tend to, don't we? Because it's so dramatic, right?
Because it's so dramatic. But I didn't learn anything there, which is what an epiphany is. It's a sudden clarity of knowledge, except that no matter what else, I was not willing to stay in that life anymore.
Right.
That's what I learned there.
Okay.
And so I did some fast talking. I told the guy I was talking to come back, meet me at midnight, and I vanished.
Right.
I just disappeared from my whole life, from all the people I knew, all the money I owed, all the money that was owed me, all the women that, you know, everything.
Everything. Right. Now,
And
did you feel relief at that, or was it something else around that disappearance underwent?
it was clarity.
Okay, cool.
That's what I felt. The relief didn't happen for quite a while because, first of all, I had 16 years worth of drugs in my system.
Yeah.
And you really do have to detox. In my case, you have to detox. And I started slowly but surely to trust that the environment that I had gone back into for safety wasn't going to just sort of, disappear around me.
Right.
And then I started feeling relief. But I'll tell you, for months and months after the day I vanished, I would get this sudden surge of adrenaline right around 11 p.m., 12 midnight, and it would last me till 4 a.m. I couldn't stop thinking about everything.
Okay.
And my heart would just pound, and I'd sweat. I sweat in bed every day for months, or every night for months, just reliving that stuff.
Yeah.
Which I now think is because I managed to put it in a box for so long. And only when I started to look and go, wow, what the hell was I doing? Only then did I allow the full force of it to sort of hit me, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to the relief question, no, not right then and there.
Okay.
No, I knew I had dodged a bullet.
Right.
Maybe literally,
Yeah.
But I didn't feel relief yet.
Right. So it takes you a while then to decompress, to come to terms with what's going on, and really to start thinking about unraveling all those years of conditioning that you've had from day one. Yeah. Because it's not something that you've picked up when you've gone to school or when you've started work. This is something from day one, right?
This was from day one. And, it's interesting. We're all indoctrinated.
For sure.
And it really is sort of, the idea of right and wrong is sort of subjective, because if it's really just how far from the mainstream your indoctrination is, right? So if the whole world had agreed with the ideas that I was taught, I would have been a perfectly functioning citizen.
Cool. Yeah.
It's just
That's the crazy thing about it, right? It's a perspective. It's a point of view.
Yeah. And so we're all indoctrinated. We're all brainwashed. And I think that, I don't resent any of that stuff, because I think that for whatever reason, the experiences I've had in my life seem to have been more visceral, more intense than the norm.
Right.
But it's also given me insights and abilities and teaching tools that are more intense and more visceral than the norm. And so I can get results for people that are more intense, more visceral, and
and that's what I was going to say or ask, just going on from that. So that must give you some real insight when dealing with people who are struggling with old paradigms, old belief systems, old conditioning, and who are kind of hooked onto it and are really like struggling to let that kind of level of conditioning go.
Interesting you say that. Interesting choice of words, because what I find is most people are not in fact struggling to let it go.
Right.
They think they're struggling to let it go. And this is funny because I'm not a mindset coach, but most of my coaching, 80% of it is mindset. I teach coaches how to make money. That's what I do. Right. And this much of it is your strategies. This much of it is, what are the thoughts, actions, feelings, and emotions that keep getting in your way to stop you from implementing those strategies? Like, I've given you the straight line. There's money at the other end of it.
But we just struggle to follow that line for some reason, right?
Yeah, we do. It's fascinating to me. And so that's where I've been able to synthesize all the stuff that I learned and experienced, which is sort of the perfect degree from the School of Hard Knocks for a life coach or a mindset coach. Yeah. And that's how I've been able to move it over into this other thing. I don't get enough reward from mindset coaching, lifestyle coaching. I need to be able to help people make money. Yeah. And it's just a thing that I need. And it probably actually comes from my life where I was told I was worthless. I was shown I was useless. I was, it basically reflected back that I had no value.
Mm.
And so when I can help somebody, make hundreds of thousands of dollars, to me, that's not only good for them and not only good for me in the present, but I also get to look back on my past and go, I told you I could do it.
So was that a driver for you initially, that you'd been told that you were worthless? You'd been told. I actually, to be fair, in similar ways from members of my family, because of the choices I made and the direction I went in, was counter against everything my family stood for. Right. So I followed an athletic path. I became a professional athlete, and my family are like, blue collar workers. No one had ever decided to do that. Everyone went into a trade. No one stepped outside the family circle and searched for something else. And I did it. And I did it with all my intention, with all my efforts, and with all my, enthusiasm. And that caused a real problem for a lot of members of my family. So I kept getting told I was a waste of time, and this kind of thing. And I was driven initially by this almost rage in many ways to prove people wrong. That was my motivation back then. Yeah. I'll show you how good I am. The Muhammad Ali thing. I'll show you how good I am, kind of thing. Is that a driver for you?
Hell yes. Not so much anymore, but the analogy I like is when you're breaking free of gravity, use any fuel that'll get you there. Right? Because once you get out of the atmosphere, meaning you've created enough momentum, it takes very little fuel to go forward compared to what it takes to break out of the stories and break out of the family shit and break out of, that's where you need whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I absolutely set out to flip off everyone who ever put me down, everyone who ever said I couldn't do it. Absolutely. I still sometimes do that. The thing is that as I get older and I move further from that, to continue the fuel analogy, it burns kind of toxic, doesn't it? It burns kind of harsh, right? And so I want to be aware of that. Like, I really want to live to be 120, and so I don't want to be taxing my nervous system with hate and rage.
You have a sort of a system of checks then that you run yourself to make sure that you're not doing things like that are too negative, too toxic.
Yeah, man, it's pretty evident, because if I'm working, maybe through a moment where I don't feel like working, as an example, if I'm powering through something, and like for me, it's like if I'm thinking of the stupid shit my family told me, well, it's pretty obvious. And then if I check in with my body and I've got that sort of adrenaline-y, static-y kind of tense energy, it's pretty obvious. But I will use that look, I'm not Captain Self-Righteous on a mountaintop.
No.
I'll use whatever it takes to get me there.
Yeah.
It's a by any means necessary thing. I just really understand that the older I get, the more I want to take it easy on my nervous system.
It's interesting you say that, because I saw a post from you today, which you reposted from a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And in that one a couple of years ago, you were talking about struggle.
Yeah.
And you kind of self-checked yourself today and said, actually, today, life, work, everything is so much easier. I'm not struggling.
Yeah.
What led you to that realization?
Well, now I guess it was reading back what I had written in that old post, and seeing like, I agree with every single word of this, and yet it doesn't reflect the entirety of my current view.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So yeah, so the what I was doing was I was railing against the people who are manipulative with this idea that, the implication, which is never stated, is if you work with me.
Right. Yes.
And then what's stated is it can be so easy. You can just choose in, you can manifest, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's absurd. I know a lot of those high level manifestation coaches, and they themselves work very hard. They're very crafty and very sort of slick about never defining it as work, but they
Good
put the
marketing,
time in.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they put the time in while meanwhile implying to you, all you have to do is like hire them for $10,000 and then choose. You know? It's like, yeah, all right, whatever.
It's also why I got interested with that particular post was when I was doing my research. I saw that you wrote a book which I've ordered, The Tao of the Unbreakable Man.
Yeah.
And I was interested in the title because obviously you referenced the Tao. And the Tao is all about effortless action and flow, etc., etc. So I wondered if that shaped you in any way, shape, or form.
Hugely, hugely. I'm spiritual discipline agnostic, meaning that I don't have dogma for any one particular philosophy or religion, but I'll take anything, like I just said earlier, any means necessary.
Yeah.
I'll take anything that I perceive as valuable in helping me to achieve what I want to achieve. And I can say that without a whole lot of kind of, what if I turn into a bad guy when I make millions of dollars? That sort of narrative, right? Because I know my motivations. I know myself to an extent that it's like, I'm not in any way worried that I'm going to somehow be corrupted if I choose the wrong thing to help me get somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a tangent, but I guess I do like getting on my soapbox about all that stuff. Like any kind of dogma is going to slow you down.
Right.
And so do I like the Tao? Yes. But the Tao has playful contradictions that are meant to inspire deep thought within it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
Right.
Yeah.
And it does in points talk about effortless action, but the word action implies effort. Right. And I just love that about it. And I love that about the whole Asian aesthetic to philosophy and spirituality. So I also chose the word unbreakable very, very deliberately.
Right.
When I was younger, I thought of myself as unbreakable, like a steel rod or a brick wall.
Right. Okay. Very rigid, right?
Yeah, rigid, exactly. And so hopefully I've succeeded in the book in showing how I sort of had to evolve, The rigid tree gets blown over in the storm, right? Where the supple reed just and then comes back up.
Flexible, it's yielding.
That's more unbreakable.
That's the strength, right? That's the unbreakable strength. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love the paradox, the subtle and lovely and poetic paradox of the Tao and other Eastern traditions as well, as you say there. And it's something I believe that you, at one level you can intellectually grasp, but until you actually allow yourself to live it, to be it, to experience it, you're always going to have a surface level understanding of that. What kind of personal philosophy do you live from now?
I think if it was to be distilled into a philosophy, I had this during the writing of that book and shortly before then. I was really examining, as is my nature, I suppose, my whole family, but particularly my father's side, and my father and his father and his father and his father, which is as far back as we've been able to trace, were really, really hard men.
Right.
Really hard men. Literal homesteader who fought for a piece of property in the Midwest where it freezes in the winter and it's hot as hell in the summer. He built a cabin with his bare hands.
Wow.
He was documented in fighting off 2 brown bears and like multiple pumas, like big cats, with nothing more than a shotgun. I'm just not shit compared to that.
No.
You know what I mean?
we don't tend to get that in London.
And so, but in my family, my immediate family I was raised in, we're all intellectual. We're all sort of live the life of the mind, while also being these sort of, hippie conclave, separate from workaday life. And it was just a really weird sort of like no roots, no grounding kind of a life. They didn't
Right.
care about money. They didn't care about, I shudder to think what's happening with my mother. I've been sort of had to distance myself from my whole family.
Okay.
And writing that book that you're about to read didn't help matters, because
Right. No, I'm sure. Yeah.
I call myself out, but I call everybody out.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you're going to go, you're going to go, right? You
Yeah.
have to be authentic.
Yeah.
You have to. It's cathartic writing, isn't it? It's something.
It is.
It's part of my personal philosophy that
Yeah.
I write because
Yeah.
it enables me to be truly who I am, to express myself as I truly want to express myself, and whether it's published or not is irrelevant. But it's that flow of getting it out and into the world that I seem to enjoy so much. Yeah,
me too. And it was cathartic. It was huge. But to the question of the personal philosophy, we were, my blood family, my siblings and my mother and my stepfather, to the extent that he was around, were way skewed to the sort of mental, cerebral, intellectual side.
Right. Okay.
That's not me, man. I like to lift heavy weights. I've been in lots of fist fights. You know what I mean? Like, so there's that part of me. And they always alienated that part of me that was never sort of welcome at the table.
Okay.
And so it was a lot of work and discovery and processing and blah, 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 just to sort of get to the point where I said to myself, I accept that part of me.
Right.
Like that part of me saved my life over and over and over again.
Yeah. Did you appreciate that at that time, or was it something you could only look back on?
It's just who I was. In a tight spot, I would either run fast, fight hard, get creative, whatever that it took. Yeah. But my family, like, it was the analogy I like is that, let's pretend you're a little boy and you befriend this savage beast. Yeah. And only because you befriended the savage beast are you able to get through the deep, dark forest and back home. Yeah. You get back home and your family's waiting on the porch and they see the savage beast and they say, I can't come in the house. Mm. And, you're like, but it's my friend, but it saved my life and nobody cares. Mm. They make you wrong for befriending the beast. That's what it was like. Okay. It was just never a seat at the table for the very part of me that allowed me to live through the circumstances that were inevitable as a result of my upbringing. It's just this huge circle of profound dysfunction. So all that is to say that my philosophy, my personal ethos, my personal whatever is honor the primal, seek the divine.
Okay. Interesting.
Because I like both. Yeah. I don't want to get so in my head and so, reaching up after these high level things that I forget about that I stop honoring the savage beast that kept me alive.
I think that's quite profound, Manny. We spoke a little while ago about the Tao, and the Tao is about opposites being in harmony. Yeah. And without those opposites in harmony, you don't have balance. No. And sometimes you're your calm self, you're your divine self, and sometimes you're your not so calm, more savage self. And there has to be room at the table for both of them, or you're not complete.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a huge source of contention. Mm. If your own family is always telling you you're too intense, settle down, when you don't even feel riled up. Right. What the message is, we don't accept you. We don't accept you. We don't accept you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult for you to accept you as well, which becomes a problem, as you so eloquently put it. Yeah. So moving on, so you work on your mindset, you get out of your life, you reinvent yourself over a period of, I'm sure, years. It must have taken.
Yeah, it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah. And you discover this ability to then help others express themselves. Yeah. I know you do a lot of speaker coaching for coaches and stuff like that. How did that come about?
Well, so, at some point, I I got serious about the examination of what are the things that I like doing. This is it's very common for entrepreneurs. We have to go through this journey. What do I like doing, and where does that intersect with what I'm good at, and where does that intersect with kind of my values? And one of the things that is absolutely central to me is I get the most sort of simple pleasure from teaching and helping. I mean, I feel like a lot of us say that. Judging by the quality of teaching in the space, I don't know how true it is. I mean, honestly. And then for me, though, it's a very meaningful, gratifying, important part of who I am.
Right.
It's important to me to be a good teacher. And so I didn't even really have a destination like, I'll teach this, I'll teach that. But then when I wrote the book, the consensus was, well, you should be, what we would call a life coach. You should be some sort of a mindset life coach. And so I started a podcast because I didn't know anything about building an audience or how you get clients. I was trying to get clients locally, and, I was just, it was silly. It was funny. It was an exercise in being a beginner.
Yeah. Which we all start from, funnily enough.
Which we all start from. But
that beginner time, right?
Yeah, right. As soon as I got the podcast up and launched, people actually started messaging me and asking me if I could teach them to sound like I did.
Right.
Which is the furthest thing in the world from what I was hoping for the podcast to achieve.
Right.
However, and let this be a lesson to your listeners, your market will tell you what they want from you.
Absolutely.
And it is not your job to be so self-important that you don't listen to your market. Unless you like poverty.
Right, yeah.
If you're a fan of poverty,
comes in, right?
Yeah.
You spoke about that earlier, yeah.
Yeah. If you're a fan of poverty, like I talk a lot, especially in my personal life and with my close friends and with people, about the difference between being right and being useful.
Nice analogy, yeah.
And it's an evolution, I think. It's an evolution of our maturity. At first we want to be right all the time.
Yeah.
Never realizing that alienates people. Same thing plays out in the coaching world or in your market.
All the time, yeah.
Right? Listen to your audience. So for me, when people said, in essence, I'll pay you if you can make me sound better on the microphone, I said yes. And I'll never forget going to my wife and going, look at this. I made $397, for 1 month of coaching somebody on their voice. And then that led to public speakers becoming interested,
right.
And from there, I started to look at, because I had done some public speaking, I had done lots of acting, and I'd done lots and lots and lots of musical performance.
Right. Okay.
I know I have hundreds of hours on the stage, probably 1,400 hours on stage. And I know about how to be charismatic, how to command the audience.
Yeah.
I have a lot of skill there. And so I started to put that together. And it's funny about being a beginner and being naive. I thought, oh my gosh, what if I was to coach people who wanted to be public speakers, thinking that no one had ever thought this before.
Untapped market, go.
Yeah. And so I get in there and I start talking about that as who I am. I start positioning myself, and this is my brand, only to discover it's a flooded market, to say the least. And here's something else. It comes back to good teaching versus people who just try to teach. Most of what I see out there still to this day, even though coaching speakers is not my primary focus now, most of you guys are not very good. I'm sorry, but that's just, you're not. If someone pays you $10,000 and you can't see a night and day light switch on and off difference, like, you're not that good.
No.
And that is easily, from my little sort of limited perspective, 95% of the market, 98% of the market. They figure because they got on stage, made some sales, did that they can now teach it. Do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Before you, because, speaker coaches are not cheap.
No.
So, and most of them are not good.
This transcends coaching, full stop. I say, I come from a professional athlete background. I know coaches in all sorts of sports these days, and I've got to tell you that the levels are interesting. Let's be nice. We're not trying to be right here. We're trying to be kind, right? So the levels are interesting, and we'll leave it at that. But I do think that coaching suffers from that, across the board.
Sure. Yeah. It's that's what happens when an industry is like the wild, wild west. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
When it's, and this is not an argument for regulating the industry. This is just an argument for doing a Google search, doing some due diligence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
Well, you were basically bashing every coach in the world, which is great.
Yeah, well, 98% of them.
Listen to this show.
Of them.
That's probably going to change now, my friend.
Not all of them, all but 2%.
Yeah. No, I love it because I have got one of the things I'm really quite proud of is that I do have a reputation for being honest and transparent and not, I speak the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. So I'm absolutely delighted to hear you say that because I concur absolutely with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I do know some really, really good coaches. So
do I. We were talking about how I got to where what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it started off with literally voice coaching.
Right.
Sort of evolved into speaker training, realized, the market was flooded. Happened to get an opportunity to partner up with a guy who was quite a bit further down, along his path than me. And one of the things he said was, I want to sell a program that teaches speakers how to create their own events.
Right.
But I'd really like it if you would do the training the speakers part within it.
Okay.
I said, great. He said, what I need you to do is take your training and either you have to break it into modules, and it should either be laid out with alliterative, like the 5 P's of this or the 4 A's of that or whatever, or it should be acronymic.
Right. Yeah.
So one way or the other, you got to make it easily memorable. And I bring that up because that was a profound sinking into the teaching for me.
Right.
So I took everything that I had been teaching and I made it into 3, in my mind, incredibly elegant acronyms.
Right. Poise,
speak, and so let's see, it was story. Poise, speak, and story.
Right.
Right. I just hit it out of the park with that 3 5-letter acronyms that encased everything. The beauty of that was how deep I had to go into the material to be able to create the acronyms.
Okay.
And from there, what really emerged as the clear winner was the storytelling acronym.
Right. Nice.
So what happened was people started to, even though I don't feel like I was sort of promoting that more, but people really started to focus on my storytelling piece. So then I wound up sort of coaching primarily on storytelling and writing your signature talk. And through all of this, everyone who I work with is saying, can you get me booked to speak? Naturally, right?
Yeah.
And so I kept saying, I'll make a training on it. I'll make a training on it, and then one day I finally made the training. The person who broke the camel's back asked me, and I said, all right, I'll do it. And so I put together this training, and I call it the 28-day Get Booked to Speak training. And as I'm making it, I know that people are going to get disheartened because starting into speaking is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a ton of work. You got to prospect. You got to fill out applications. You got to follow up and all this stuff. And I put a bunch of people through this program. We got about halfway through. And, even though I was only giving one new idea every 2 days, people are falling behind and everything.
Right.
So about halfway through the 28 days, I just said, would it help you guys if somebody was to do all this work for you? Is that something you'd pay for? And I signed up like 5 clients for something I hadn't even built yet. So I set about in earnest to create the done for you speaker marketing.
Right.
That really did well. We got 60 clients right away. And so now we're applying to 50 gigs every month for each student, for each client.
Wow. Okay.
So
all right. That's a lot of work.
Huge.
Right?
Yeah. It started off as a lot of work, but I really refined the system and the workflow. It started off taking about 14 or 15 hours to fulfill
Whoa.
for each client. And I got it down to about 4 hours.
Okay.
So now I have it just kicks ass.
Yeah.
But what I found out was we passed the 5,000 application mark, right? We got to like 8,000 applications before I put the brakes on and said, there's things need to happen before we continue.
Okay.
But what I found was that about 7 of the 60, maybe six of this is a small minority, right? We're getting almost all of the invitations.
Okay.
We're applying for everyone.
Right. So why was that?
Yeah. Well, of those 6 or 7 people, every single one of them was branded, meaning I don't mean logo. I don't mean website. I don't mean color deck that matches the headshot you like the best.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on to Facebook, if you go on to LinkedIn, if you go on to Instagram, they look like pros.
Okay, cool.
They look like thought leaders, influencers, speakers, whatever. The vast majority didn't have dialed in social media.
Right.
And I had concurrently joined someone, a mentor. He's now my mentor. I had joined his personal branding accelerator program. And so I'm starting to be aware of personal branding for myself, which, by the way, spoiler alert, personal branding at the intro and even the somewhat advanced levels is all about your content game.
Right.
It's really all about your content game. So I'm looking and I'm like, okay, these guys who are getting all the gigs, pretty much you can tell at a glance that they're serious and they know what they're doing. This vast majority over here is like, okay, you got your kids there, you're doing a keg stand in college, and it's still for some reason on your profile, even though you're a 45-year-old professional now. You're ranting about politics, you're ranting about religion, you're ranting either pro or anti-vaccination. Like, these things will kill your ability to get booked to speak. Let me be perfectly clear for you listeners. If you want to be a professional and use social media to reach the world, you have to treat your real estate professionally. You just have to.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So important.
Yeah. I use the analogy that Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever is like a packed, fast-moving freeway, like a super freeway. And that's all the people that are on it. But you can put up as many billboards along the freeway as you want. There's no limit to how many you can put up. And what's going to happen? People driving by, racing back and forth, are going to see you. And the more they see you, and the more they see you showing up in a certain way, I mean, it's just the power of association, right? We just our mind starts to make a heuristic that Manny does this, Paul does this, and then what happens is it intersects at some point with their need for this and this. That's how you stay top of mind in a nutshell.
And that's where you need to be, right?
I would say so. Unless you like being a best kept secret.
Absolutely. And who loves that poverty, right?
Right. I've done both. And let me tell you, not being a best kept secret, way better.
So what's next for you, Manny? Where'd you go from here, my friend?
So after creating a personal branding program and just killing it, this thing is beyond my wildest expectations. There are probably 25 people in the program now, still new. We've booked almost $1 million in new client business in 5 months.
That's going some. That really is.
Let me tell you, next year it'll easily be $5 million in new client business for my students.
Brilliant work.
So good. But plus, I mean, what I want you to understand is one of my students got given a primetime radio show.
Wow.
So he has your radio during rush hour, like 2 days a week. My students are landing podcast interviews. They're growing their audiences like ridiculously. Between them, their audience is like, between them and me in the last 5 months, the audience reach has grown to probably 3 million.
Wow. Okay.
And if you don't think an audience is important, you are missing the boat profoundly. right? People talk about vanity metrics and, oh, hey, you know, what's the use of likes and comments? Are you kidding me right now? Like that's people who like you. Those are the people who buy from you.
Yeah, people who want to engage with you. People want to have conversations.
So then from that perspective, what's the value of having 1 million person audience? You know, and so what's next is I have now gone back to the speaker marketing system and I've married it with the personal branding system.
Okay.
I'm anticipating that for the right people, this will be, and I know we throw around the term game changer a lot, but this will really change the game for you. I would anticipate that the people that get involved with this will be able to genuinely triple or quadruple their reach, their impact, their income within a year's time. It's going to be huge. I was just talking with my mastermind guys today, and you know, within the next, it's hard to say when, but computer simulation and deep fakes and all that are going to be so good that we are going to start pulling away from strictly trusting video. There's nothing more powerful for you as a coach, an expert, a thought leader, whatever, as speaking to people in real life. Right?
Yeah.
And so more and more, everybody wants to speak as it is, but more and more, it's going to be the huge differentiator in your trust in your audience building and everything.
Yeah, and I think it's coming full circle back to that anyway. I've certainly seen a shift in my life and my business where I get much better results now and engage much more with people when I'm face to face or talking with them actually via this medium, you know, rather than I ever did by uploading videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the more technology plays a role in our lives, the more important real connection becomes.
Yeah, definitely. There's a conversation I have with my kids because my kids have grown up with technology.
Yeah,
same here. To text or to game online or to do all that is second nature to them. And I say to them, you know, the real skill is going out and speaking and meeting and engaging. That's what's going to get you success as you grow older.
I think so too. I think it's going to be, it's never going away.
No.
You know, I'm not worried at all about the sort of doomsayers like, oh my God, are we alienating ourselves? No, we're not. We're not. The computers will never be able to simulate real connection, not face to face. I mean, if they do, then we're in the matrix and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it's game over anyway. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for that, man. It's been a delight.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you, Manny?
So 2 things there. One is I'm going to give everybody who listens to this, who wants to, a free copy, digital copy of my book.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll give you the link for it. I'm actually having my assistant build it right now.
Yeah. I'll put that on the show notes so they get all the links anyway, but that's really kind of you. Thank you so much for that.
100% free. And then you can come find me at Manny Wolfe Group on Facebook, or just look me up on Facebook. It's where I spend most of my time now. And I pride myself on being pretty accessible. So,
and this is true. I mean, I a lot of coaches listen, a lot of trainers, a lot of coaches, a lot of teachers listen to this podcast, and I'm involved with quite a few. And look up Manny. Manny's content is amazing. As I said at the start of the podcast, I've only recently caught up with him, but some of his stuff is just, well, all of his stuff, not just some of it, is just truly amazing. It will hit a nerve. He speaks the truth. But we need to hear that. You know, there's so many people that won't say what needs to be said these days, that to find people that actually do, for me, is an absolute delight. And I'm mindful of your time as well, Manny, and it's been an absolute joy and a delight to have you here. And I'm so thankful for you to have come on and shared your wisdom with us today.
Well, thanks. It was really great. I was happy to be here and happy to share.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Mr. Manny Wolfe.
My pleasure.